Congressional reporter for BuzzFeed, Kate Nocera, and political editor and White House correspondent at the Huffington Post, Sam Stein. You know, Robert, we talked a lot about the pizza versus the pizza box. After the GOP autopsy, this Republican conviction that they didn't actually need to change the product they were selling, they just needed to change the marketing. It's unbelievable to me that the whole 47% thing clearly has not made a dent, and nowhere do you see that in a more pronounced fashion than the Republican talking points on unemployment insurance.
Well, largely because I think if you asked most members of the GOP, 47% to them wasn't a gaffe, it's a belief.
Yes.
I mean, I heard it, you know, in debates that I had with people all of last year before the tape was uncovered. I do think, look, this is one of those things that the Republicans will either learn this the easy way or the hard way. I remember, you know, watching these debates about unemployment insurance going back all the way to George H.W. Bush and watching the Democratic Congress bring that bill up week after week after week only to have him veto it. And it is not hard ultimately to create a political narrative around who cares about what and who doesn't care about something else. And again, I think, you know, that is learned the hard way or it's learned the easy way.
Well, and Sam, especially when you look at the reality of the long-term unemployed. First of all, as Paul Krugman points out, there are 3 times as many job seekers as job vacancies here. And if you look at long-term unemployment since 1970, in 1970, there were less than 10 average weeks of unemployment. In 2013, 36.9 weeks. That's how long the average worker is unemployed.
Well, you know, I think Benjamin Franklin made a great point over there.
You're just waiting to go back to the founding fathers.
Smile while you I think what Rand Paul misses is that people don't stay unemployed because they're lazy and they're on unemployment insurance for 99 weeks, which is actually capped at 73 weeks. They are unemployed in part because the economy sucks and continues to suck, but also because there is discrimination among employers against the long-term unemployed. It's been documented. People tend not to want to hire people who've been out of work a lot longer, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle. So then the question becomes, how do you get out of that cycle? What kind of policies can you do that helps eliminate that cycle? And I don't think, you know, necessarily that this is going to be a policy that suddenly reverses everything, but it certainly stops it from getting worse.
Well, and I mean, it has stimulus benefits too, right? I mean,
but then the question is, how do you pay for it, right? Everything has to be paid for now. Not in the past. They didn't always pay for unemployment insurance in the past, but this is going to be $25 billion. How do you pay for it? They're already having trouble how to alleviate the sequester. So what do they do to find $25 billion to ensure that people don't lose unemployment insurance?
Well, I think, Kate, first of all, I'd love to know your thoughts on how the Democrats have handled this on the Hill. Because initially, when the unemployment assistance was discussed, Pelosi said, we are not making a deal without the inclusion of unemployment benefits. It now looks like that may not be the case, and Democrats in Congress are making at least what seems to be an assessment that, look, it's better to alleviate sequestration and deal with unemployment stuff later. I just wonder where the political will is to deal with unemployment insurance if you're not going to deal with it now on the verge of the holiday season.
Right. Well, Democrats certainly aren't going to let it go. Senator Sherrod Brown introduced today a letter along with, I think it was 32 senators that said, you know, we need to deal with this and we need to deal with this soon. So even if it doesn't end up in the budget, I don't think Democrats are going to let it go either as a talking point or as something that, you know, they know needs to get done in the next months. In the next month or so.
You know, what is interesting to me, Jonathan, is that we are talking about this deal as if there's actually a deal. And part of the reason that we think there's going to be a deal is because everybody's been sequestered in some, well, not everybody, but Paul Ryan and Patty Murray have been sequestered in some sort of pneumatically sealed chamber discussing all of this, and we get, you know, dribs and drabs of information. But at the end of the day, this still requires Paul Ryan to go back to the raucous caucus in the House and sell something that involves increasing federal spending from where levels used to be. And I am just unconvinced. I mean, call me a skeptic.
I hear you.
Paul Ryan
come to Washington. But Alex, here's the thing. It's Paul Ryan who has to go and make the sale. It's not John Boehner who has shown an inability to convince his caucus of anything. So the fact that it's Paul Ryan, that's a mark in his favor. The other thing is
the fact that he exists as Paul Ryan. John Boehner.
But the other thing is, and it was in the Washington Post story today, this deal assuming that there is a deal, doesn't have any of the hard stuff that would knock a deal out of, that would blow a deal out of the water to begin with. So that there's an increase in spending, yeah, that might be a problem, but all the hard decisions that usually have been in grand bargain deals in the last 2 years aren't there.
One reason to be more optimistic that he can sell it to the House caucus, the conservatives, is that there has been complaints among Republicans, especially on the Appropriations Committee, that sequestration is unlivable. And secondarily,
by that they mean the defense industry can't stomach these cuts.
Yes, mostly. And on top of that, in the next round of sequestration, which takes spending down to $967 billion, almost comes exclusively out of defense. It's another $20 billion cut around January 15th, strictly from defense budgets. And so there is an appetite among the hawkish wing of the House Republicans to just get rid of this. And they realize that if they're going to get rid of this, they have to give in a little bit on the non-defense discretion.
Well, weirdly, you know, sequestration is now having the impact that many believed it would have to push people to get a deal in the first place, which is untenable budget cuts. But I think Jonathan's point is really important. This is, if you're watching at home, this isn't the grand bargain.
Yeah.
Okay? This is politics.
And bargain.
This is politics as the art of only the possible. And the possible in this case is something very small. It is, there is clearly no appetite for brinksmanship again. It is getting what they can get done, not getting into a bigger, intractable fight that might shut down the government or cause really hard political pain on either side, explaining to their base what they're getting but what they're giving up. So this is the art of the possible, and right now the possible is very, very, very small.
And I just wonder, I mean, who really wins? And I think it's this town. The skepticism is, my skeptic levels are higher than they usually are, Kate. I look at the UI, the unemployment insurance stuff, that may be carved out of this. And yes, while we're increasing federal spending levels, that's basically because, you know, congressional Democrats have gone and scrounged around for loose change on Sam Stein's floor and found a way to pay for this stuff. I mean, it's like, this is all paid for, right? And that is distinctly, the goalposts have been moved right insofar as everything now needs to be paid for. At the same time, here we have the Farm Bill. And, you know, we've had plenty of Senate Democrats on this show saying we are not going to go above the $4 billion of cuts that are in the Senate bill. And now it looks like they're going to double those cuts. In addition to $5 billion in expired stimulus spending, that's $13 billion in SNAP cuts.
The thing is that all of this budget brinksmanship has distracted people from fighting over the real stuff, like the Farm Bill. So I think people would like to see a longer budget, even if it's a tiny budget, so they can get back to talking about immigration a lot more. I mean, immigration advocates actually want a budget deal so they could maybe move on to talking about immigration reform or talking about the Farm Bill, which is hugely important, and we haven't really heard a lot about it.
But to your point, this is an interesting number. In Paul Ryan's original budget, which everyone decried as incredibly conservative budget, the expected spending in 2014 was $1.095 trillion. What we will end up with this time around is about $1 trillion if we get a deal, which is less than the original Paul Ryan budget. So the debate has clearly been shifted. Now, Paul Ryan had different aspects of the budget that devoted more to defense than non-discretionary, but clearly we are in a place where what we value as increased spending is relatively to where we were incredibly low.
You know, Robert, the president has been on a messaging campaign about fairness, and his, I thought, great, I guess you could call it a sequel to the Osawatomie. Am I saying that right? Osawatomie?
Osawatomie.
Osawatomie.
Potato.
Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson.
Which was also, you know, it was an extension of the Knox College speech that he gave in 2005 as U.S. Senate.
These are